If you've never heard of this game, you're probably well justified in that since it was never released in the United States. And because of that, the game isn't completely translated into English, and anything that is all because of a fan-made patch. That being said, it'd be inaccurate to say this is a fair read of the game, since for my part I don't even understand the Japanese alphabet. Regardless though, ever since I discovered this game, it's been consuming countless hours of my free time. And with so few game releases interesting me lately, and as much time I've been putting into this game instead, I just had to do a video about it. And I have mentioned it in 1 or 2 videos in the past, but with the game's recent launch of its 3rd season, I figured it's time to do a dedicated video about it. But keep in mind throughout this review though, it isn't completely translated, and your experience with it might vary depending on your understanding of the language. But also keep an open mind since I'm able to enjoy the game despite not knowing a single letter of Japanese. To start, let's talk about the things that fans of the original Dragon's Dogma might be familiar with. Most important of all being its legendary combat system. Not only are its core systems preserved in Dragon's Dogma Online, but it's also seen a number of tweaks and improvements, such as a fully controllable camera while grabbing onto monsters, a clear phasing system for bosses and mini-bosses, with normal phases, rage phases, and vulnerable phases, and a complete rework of all the different classes, making them all fun to play and balanced, with each one bringing something unique to every fight that no other class can provide at least as well as they can. With not only some new classes being added to the mix, but also with all the returning classes getting their own improvements. Warrior is now actually really fun to play, unlike the previous game. The Strider has now been split into 2 fully fleshed out classes, the Seeker being the dagger portion of it, and the Hunter being the bow portion of it. All the while retaining the core things that made the original classes fun, and building up from them to make them even more interesting. And of course this would all be for nothing if the bosses weren't any fun, which is an element of Dark Arisen that they absolutely nailed, and I'm happy to say is done absolute justice in this game. While there's still nothing that beats the original Grigori fight in Dark Arisen, Dragon's Dogma Online is still packed with a ton of memorable bosses, made even more memorable by an amazing soundtrack just like the previous game, including my favorite combat track of all time from Dark Arisen, returning in a new remixed form. And one thing that surprised me that I was afraid was going to get thrown to the wayside when this game turned into an MMO was the day-night cycle and the dark caverns that actually required you to light a lantern, and the different more menacing creatures that come out at night. I was excited to learn that in Dragon's Dogma Online these darkness and nighttime mechanics are still intact. And the last major returning feature from Dark Arisen is the pawn system, which allows you to create your own AI-controlled pawn to help you on your adventures and to hire the pawns of other players in order to fill up your party to take on tougher challenges. And this system's seen some improvements from the previous game, with a much easier to navigate interface for searching and hiring other pawns, and now having the ability over time to unlock 2 additional pawns of your own. And with the added ability to set one of your pawns as a partner pawn, serving as sort of a romance option, because Japan. And moving on from the returning features from Dark Arisen, we have a bunch of entirely new features for this game, including a new, much easier to use fast travel system, allowing you to get around the map much easier than before, which is a huge plus, considering how much the new playable map dwarfs that of Dark Arisen. And now with each area you have an area rank that increases the more quests you complete in that zone, contributing to this feeling that you're making an impact on the world around you, as more dangerous monsters, quests, and zones unlock as you increase your area rank. Even going a little step further in the new 3rd season, with a subquest to restore a decrepit castle you recaptured from the enemy. Which brings up the cities, which have seen a massive improvement from the dull, colorless cities from Dark Arisen. And in these better cities, we even have a player housing system, where you get your own room to customize with crafted furniture that also serves as a sort of trophy room for cool achievements you unlock. And on the topic of customization, you now also have a sort of appearance tab of your equipment menu, which allows you to equip any armor or weapon for your vocation regardless of stats, to have that item's appearance override that of the item you have equipped in your regular equipment slot. And beyond that, you now have the ability to use dyes to change the color of any armor or weapon piece you want. And while the dye system in this game is a little bare bones from other dye systems I've seen in other games, it's a welcome relief from the nothing we had in Dark Arisen. With the transition into MMO territory comes the obvious addition of emotes. While the system for performing these emotes could use some work on the PC version, the sheer variety of silly poses and animations in the emote system makes up for it in my opinion. And another new feature that's common to MMOs is the appearance of semi-seasonal events. These range from holiday events like Christmas or Halloween stuff, to promotional collaborations like the recent Attack on Titan event they had. While personally they haven't done any collaborations for something I'm excited for, it does bring up the possibility for something like maybe if they were to collaborate with From Software for a Dark Souls crossover. And then something in this game we don't see too often is crossplay. No matter what system you get Dragon's Dogma Online for, you'll still be able to play with all your friends on other systems. For as many reasons as I have to love this game, the lack of a complete translation is far from my only issue with it. And it's more than just the old problems from Dark Arisen like the dull repetitive quest structure which is made even worse in this, or the inability to swim which, yeah, you still can't do. Or the need to be running everywhere you go, which makes a return here although it isn't as bad, thanks to the updated fast travel system and the fact that stamina consumption while sprinting isn't nearly as punishing. But with fast travel restricted only to existing port crystals, makes it so that a significant portion of the game is still running around trying to get to where your quests are. And as dumb as the pawns could be sometimes in Dark Arisen, believe it or not, they somehow managed to make the pawns even stupider in this game. Thankfully there are more options this time for issuing pawn orders, but when left unattended you'll often catch them just jumping around doing nothing in a fight. There is a new system in Season 3 that supposedly lets you tweak some of their combat behaviors to fix these problems, but unfortunately for English speakers this hasn't been fully translated yet. And while crafting in this game is technically an improvement from what we had in Dark Arisen, I still can't say what we have now is anything good and enjoyable. Most items have a laundry list of materials required to craft them in the first place, and some of those materials even need to be crafted themselves and they require another list of ingredients you need to get. So then you need to go to the bazaar to find the ingredients you need for the ingredients you need to get the items you want, and God forbid if you actually end up farming for those materials. And then let's say you get the ingredients of the ingredients that you need, and now you have to assign your pawns to craft the ingredient for the item you need. During that time they're unavailable to use in combat, which by the way could take 5 to 10 minutes just for the ingredients. And then you're finally able to craft the item itself, which could take up to 10 hours. It's a crafting system that itself is blatantly designed to sell you golden gemstones which you can use to speed up the crafting process. And the worst thing about this is the primary method for gearing up your character in the endgame. High-end content doesn't give you loot, it gives you crafting materials for you to craft loot, which you need to advance up the harsh gear ladder of content, where you will be constantly farming a single mission in order to get enough gear to advance to the next single mission, which you might not even be able to do if you picked a certain class, since some missions don't capitalize on the strengths of every class. So for some missions people will only take a healer that's a priest, and for other missions people will only take a healer that's an element archer. So the game shines the most during its early game, its main quest, and its countless dungeons. But even that feels heavily watered down with repeating tile sets in multiple different dungeons, with only small props and doodads to differentiate them from each other. It quickly leads to this uneasy feeling of familiarity with every new dungeon you visit, so that the huge number of dungeons in the game doesn't really mean a whole lot when they all look the same. Fortunately though, Season 3 has so far added a few new tile sets already, so we can hopefully expect more varied dungeons from here on out, since the new season is still in its infancy and there's not a lot of new content just yet. Even then though, you still have to wait till level 80 before you can start experiencing this new area. And unlike the dungeons, the outdoor zones for Season 3 don't really feel like anything new. And earlier I didn't finish railing on the microtransactions in this game. In addition to time gating your crafting for endgame progression, they even have a little bit of a pay to win system going here, with a slot machine style treasure lot that allows you to get high-end weapons and armor that can be equipped at any level. Thankfully the damage is minimized by this game not having any kind of PvP system, making these items restricted in usefulness to helping level up lower level classes, and the fact that there's a version of this treasure lot that costs in-game currency. But still, the presence of these pay-to-win mechanics in the first place is disappointing, especially when the only system of player trading in the game is the bazaar where you can only sell crafting materials. And lastly, the grabbing and grappling system has been toned down a bit in the recreational sense that you can't grab onto bulls and pick up bunnies anymore. A lot of this game's problems are things that just come with the territory of MMOs. So honestly, I would rather have just a Dragon's Dogma 2 with multiplayer, regular content updates, cosmetic armors, etc, all the stuff that they actually improved upon the previous game here. But if I were to try to improve this game, I do have a couple ideas. Of course, with the endgame, there needs to be multiple missions for each tier of gear, so that you're not just farming a single mission or a single dungeon for a set of gear. And for the leveling, I would honestly change the world quest so that instead of having a bonus for repeating every mission, which as it stands encourages you to repeat the same world quest over and over again, change that to a bonus for the first completion every day. That would not only encourage players to actually go out and do different world quests instead of repeating the same one over and over again, but it would also provide an incentive to actually log on every day and do a few quests to make sure you get that bonus experience. And next, of course, to solve the issue of having to run around everywhere you go, this game needs some sort of mount system. And how I would do it is to make it attached to the area rank. So upon reaching area rank 3 or 4 or something like that, make it so you unlock the zone stables and that horses will be waiting for you at the port crystals. It doesn't even have to be a collectible mount system, but if it is, it could be something that if you reach max rank for a zone, you unlock a special mount. And your collected mounts can be accessed from any zone stable. That all being said, it's time to... well, I don't know, I feel weird trying to give this a score since I don't really feel this is a fair review of the game since it's mostly in Japanese. A language I don't know a single word of, but I do know what I would go with if I were to score it, so let's just go for it. Ultimately, it feels like 3 steps forward from Dark Arisen, but also 2 steps backward. It's full of missed potential and missteps, but in the end surpassing Dark Arisen in my opinion, which I ended up giving a fairly high score of an 8 out of 10. Dragon's Dogma Online is a mediocre MMO held up high by its fucking amazing combat, improved even upon Dark Arisen, and as such, I'm gonna give this a 9 out of 10. If you liked the original Dragon's Dogma, this is a must play. If you're fluent in Japanese or don't mind a lengthy, kind of annoying setup process, I'd also recommend checking this game out. But it falls just short of that 10 out of 10 because of all its many flaws, and I'd really rather just have a Dragon's Dogma 2, but regardless, I would still be incredibly happy if they did a full US release of this game. Since even as it is, and not understanding a single word of the story, I still find myself preferring it over the original Dragon's Dogma. So anyways, please share this video around, like it, and do all that stuff that YouTubers tell you to do, you know the drill. And if you want to support this channel and help it grow, please visit my Patreon page where you can donate to help my channel. And with that, I will see you guys later.